guest today is Kerry Smith. He's the Superintendent of Water for Lafayette. And quickly, why did I think of him for this? I live on the south side, and every day when I drive into the YWCA, I drive past a new restaurant and brewery. I thought was Teays River, but after talking to Kerry, I know it's Teays River Brewery. And I looked them up on the web to say, why do they call it this? And it's because of the wonderful water under our community makes great beer. So I said, well, we got to learn more about this. So I think a lot of us have heard of this river, but there are a lot of misconceptions. And so, Kerry, thank you. Tell us about it.
Okay. No, I don't do that. Thank you for having me here. It's a privilege. This is a great organization that does a lot for the community, and I know several people that are Kiwanis. Can't hear?
They
need this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Usually I'm pretty loud. My wife tells me I'm pretty loud. But... No, I'm good. I'm good. This is good. Oh, you want to be Vanna? Okay. Well, this is a map of the Teays River Valley Aquifer through this part of our state. The Teays River used to be above ground. 50,000 years ago or so, when the glaciers moved south, it was covered over and created the Great Lakes, and this is the drainage. That is a pretty enormous thing if you think about it, because the Great Lakes are also very, very huge. This stretches all the way from the state of Virginia through West Virginia into Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and stops somewhere in Missouri. This is an ancient aquifer. We know that because just until recently, every drop of water, no matter where it was, that was on the face of the earth after 1945 would have radionuclides in them because of all the atomic bombs and the testing. Okay? Until a couple of years ago, our water didn't. So we know this water was down there since before 1945 anyway. The recharge is somewhere in Virginia. It moves through sand and gravel. The misconception is it's not a river. It was a river. When the glaciers moved, covered it over, this is water oozing through sand and gravel, which is Mother Nature's filter. So this water, when it comes up, is pretty pristine. As the gentleman who started the Teays River Brewery, and I've spoken with him, and he said he's trying to, because we're regulated by the EPA and Indiana Department of Environmental Management to add fluoride for teeth for children, for controlled tooth decay. Chlorine to disinfect, even though this water that's coming up is pristine. It really is. It tastes great. And these are things that they have to filter back out before they can brew beer. So I've been in conversation with him that he could possibly drill his own well into the Teays, because this little circle, can you hold it up, Vanna? That little circle, that's the Greater Lafayette area. This is 6 miles wide right through this part of Tippecanoe County. In some places, it's 200 feet deep. We're not going to run out of water anytime soon. Our challenge is getting it up to the surface, treating it, and then moving it on to the consumer. We have 14 production wells that are in the Teays, and we pump about 10 million gallons of water a day. West Lafayette's in it. They pump about 7 or 8 million. Purdue, about the same. What used to be Eli Lilly, was it Kiwanis? Is in it. The town of Battleground's in it. The town of Oxford, Indiana is in it, if you want to think about how far-reaching this aquifer is. But right through here, and I mentioned this earlier, William Digby had no clue when he landed here what he had discovered. Because without water, you can't have industry. We're one of the most diverse areas in the state. This is why we continue to grow when other places aren't. And you can't have any of that growth without the most precious resource on earth, and that's water. You can live 3 or 4 weeks without food, 3 or 4 months, but you can't go 3 or 4 days without water. So it's very important. And I'm very passionate about this Teays River. It's we can pump this as hard as we want to in the summer. A lot of people are irrigating their yards. And we won't drop that thing but about a foot. There are a lot of places where California's having a big problem.
Yeah.
I'm in an organization called Water for People, and we sponsor Bolivia. There are places where children have to walk 5 miles to an area that has a well to get a 5-gallon bucket of water filled up, walk all the way back. They can't go to school because they have to go get the water for the family for a day, 5 gallons. We turn on our faucet and there it is. Underneath the city of Lafayette, we've got 350 miles of water main. We service about 29,000 homes and families. If you don't know we're there, we're doing our job. If we're not out in front of your house jackhammering because there's a leak, 2 o'clock in the morning, we average about 65 to 70 broken water mains in a winter. And we fix them live so that people don't lose water pressure and they don't lose their water. Once in a while, you got to shut them off, but only for about 15 minutes. But we strive very, very hard to keep the water flowing to everybody that we can. Now, the Teays River Aquifer, in our area, our wells are, as I mentioned, we have 14 of them, and they're 100 feet deep. What we do is when we drill a well, it's not like you drill a well and then there's a bunch of water. You drill a well, you put a screen down in it, you pull the pipe back up off of the screen, and then water oozes into the well and oozes up to the top where we can pump it. As I said, we have to chemically treat it. We don't filter it because Mother Nature's filtered it for us. Now, I know that West Lafayette does filter their water, but they're filtering out iron and manganese. They're not filtering out bad things, they're filtering out hardness. Our water's pretty hard, but it's good for you. You know, I started in 1987 and I worked here in West Lafayette, and I had a lady call me. I was the plant operator here, and an elderly lady called me and said that our water was terrible, and that she had to actually buy bottled water to take her geritol. And I said, well, why don't you just drink our water if you don't need the geritol? Because it's got the iron, it's got the calcium, it's got everything you want. That phone call beat me back to the office. The boss wasn't very happy with me about that one. But I was over here for 11 years, and then 20 years ago I went over to Lafayette, and now I do work for Tony, and I know John, and I agree with you. Our mayors are wonderful people. And I knew John when he was a Lafayette police officer, and he's quite a remarkable man. But now that I've talked to you about the Teays River and maybe dispelled the thought that it was actually a river, instead it's water moving through sand and gravel, I wanted to talk about how important it is that how we have virtual water that people don't think about. Now, what I mean by virtual water, and I got this out of National Geographic about 15 years ago. You want to get it higher? Okay. You're not going to be able to read this. This is more for my benefit, but people don't think about it. In the life of a cow, okay, cows usually, we raise them from calves, and the average age of a cow when it goes to market is between 2 and 3 years old, okay? It takes 816,600 gallons of water to make that happen for one cow. A set of bed sheets, one cotton sheet takes 2,800 gallons of water to manufacture. Now you think about that, how can that be? Well, you got to grow the cotton. You got to clean the cotton. You got to process the cotton. You know, it's not just what's it take to make that bed sheet. It's everything it takes to get to that point. Processed cheese, 3 slices of processed cheese, 589 gallons of water. This is water that we don't think about using. But there's even a pound of sausage is 1,382 gallons of water. So the average person in our area uses 100 gallons of water per person per day. And you know that your shower doesn't take 100 gallons. And you know that your coffee doesn't take 100 gallons. Although there's days I feel like I've drank that much. But that is all the water it takes to sustain everything you do in every way. I can't think of anything in a process, in a factory, in a school, in anything that is so important that can exist without water. So when I was asked to come here today, I was actually pretty happy about it. I mean, we had to kind of schedule it because she would give me a date, and no, I can't. And then I would give her a date, no, you can't. And so we finally arranged it to be today. I'll let you down now, Vanna.
Okay,
thank you. There's a couple of other on here that, one cotton T-shirt, 766 gallons of water. It's just incredible. We don't think about all the ways that we need and use water. Right now I'm getting a little thirsty because I'm a little bit talkative.
Drinking water?
Yes, actually. And that's pretty good water, too. When Tony became mayor, some 15 years ago, 14 years ago, we had a conversation about whether Lafayette would ever filter their water. And we came to the conclusion that we weren't. Now, West Lafayette does filter their water. It's also a private company that has made money. But it was going to cost us, at that time, about $30 million just to build the plant. When most people have water softeners, which basically does about the same thing. So drinking this water right out of the ground, it's wonderful. I grew up on a farm. We had well water, and when we came to town, when we came to town once a month, whether we needed to or not, I would drink the city water, and I didn't like it. It's something that you have to get used to. Well, now that I've lived in Battleground now for the last 15 years, and we're in the same water as Lafayette, West Lafayette, Purdue, all those other towns are in, and I've kind of gotten used to it, and it's okay. But there's nothing better than just good old well water from Indiana, and I'm pretty proud of what I do because I worked for the gas company for 7 years. I've been in utilities ever since I was 19 years old. I worked for the gas company for several years, 8 years, I think, 7 or 8 years. And yeah, it's important to have heat in the wintertime. And I thought that was my calling until I had an opportunity to come to West Lafayette and work for them in the water industry. And I found out that this is my calling. And I'm very proud to do it. And I will answer any questions anybody might have. Yes, sir.
I will disagree with you about Indiana water. Have you ever been to Rensselaer?
Okay, is that a loading? Is there water?
You don't know?
No.
It is awful sulfur.
Oh yeah, that's not the same aquifer.
I know, but
No, yeah, I've
not
got
all
sulfur.
Indiana water is great.
How about Tippecanoe County water?
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the aquifer would drop about a foot over the course of the year, the summer, and does it regenerate that much during the winter? And is it just in the area drops a foot, or is it the whole aquifer all the way from Virginia to here?
No, it's just in our area. If you know where Duncan Meter is, okay. If somebody were to drill a well and put something down in that, it would take a year to get to our well. That's in our 1 year time of travel. So what we do does not affect any of the other areas around. It just affects ours.
Okay.
It's just a localized effect.
And with the weather and the rain and the snow we have filtering down, will replenish that?
No, that's not how we get recharged. There's about 10 feet deep in our area, 10 to 20 feet deep. There's about a 10-foot impervious clay layer. Our aquifer is called a confined aquifer. In other words, things can't get into it unless somebody drilled down and past all the clay.
So it's recharged out east and comes this way?
It is, and we're not sure where, but it's not here. And the reason I can say that is, in India, in harsh winters, we salt the roads, right? We salt the bridges. That's all gets into the river. You test the river, it has halite in it. Test our water, it doesn't. We do not have salt. We don't have any road salt. And we're talking minute amounts. We're not talking about anything you can taste, but we don't even have any halite in our water, and we test for that. We test for thousands of things. We test for nitrates. We don't have any farm runoff, which gets into the river. We don't have any of that in our water. So that proves that the Teays River is impervious to that. Now, there are aquifers that are above the Teays. It's called perched water. And I mentioned to somebody else I was talking to earlier, we have a new well field that we're going to develop and stop by the old Airts Airport. Is everyone familiar with where the Airts Airport is? The subdivision across the road, across 300 North, their wells are 90, well, we hit water at 94 feet when we were test drilling out there. So we had to go down 94 feet. Their wells aren't 94 feet deep. They're in perched water. They're in an aquifer that's actually above the Teays. So some of their wells might be 80 feet, 70 feet. So there's actually an aquifer above this aquifer. But we drilled through that down into the good stuff. So did that answer that? Yes, sir.
A few days ago, I received a notice in the mail from a water company. They would hook up drinking water in your home for $5 a month. Now, what's different about that water?
Who was this from?
From the city water.
No.
Yes, it was.
Well, I'd like to see that because this is news to me.
Okay, I'll find it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
It's interesting thinking about all your wells being 100 feet deep. I moved here from Maggie Valley, North Carolina,
Uh-huh.
and our personal well was well over 200 feet deep to get the water because of the mountains.
Yeah,
And it was good water.
and we drilled 100 and out at Airts. As you leave the river valley, you travel uphill. We drilled to 135 feet there. We found water at 94, but we hit bedrock at 135. So the wells out there would be about 35 feet deeper than they are down toward the river. Yes, sir.
So are you saying that the Teays River probably will never be polluted?
Well, I can never say never, but
Yeah, but I mean, chances
But-
not
but-
in our lifetime or our children's lifetime or anything like that?
well, we did have we've got five of our wells are where the old municipal golf course was, which is now like jungle. But we've got 5 wells there, and one of them was contaminated back in the 1980s with trichloroethylene. It was contaminated because we found some old aerial photographs from the 1930s that there used to be an airstrip there. And on that airstrip was a hangar where they worked on airplanes. And the common degreaser of the day was trichloroethylene, or TCE. And we figured that there was this wooded area that was behind this airport hangar. And we figured that they had dumped their used TCE in this wooded area, and somehow it got down into the aquifer. Well, what we did was we just had to pump 1,000 gallons a minute out of that well for 20 years into the Wabash River and clean it up. So, can it be polluted? Yes, it can. They could have dumped it down a well, or anything. The plume was about 100 yards wide and about 300 yards long, and about 50 feet below the ground. And we put an interceptor well into it and just pumped it until we got rid of all that stuff. Now we're fine. But yes, it can be polluted, but I don't think by natural causes. It would have to be something somebody did. Yeah. Yes?
We moved over in West Lafayette in 2015, and the water West Lafayette water doesn't taste good at all compared to Lafayette. And so we have to use a Brita to filter, put that in the refrigerator so that we at least get some water that tastes good. So I don't know what their West Lafayette's treating their water with, but it's.
Well, they're actually treating it less than we do in Lafayette because they filter. So that big filtration plant they've got out at Davis Ferry, and then they've got a filtration plant down at the bottom of Happy Hollow Hill. So I don't know. I left over here before they started filtering water, so I don't know what their process is now. Yes, sir.
Where does Indiana American Water fit into the picture?
Indiana American Water?
Yeah.
I know it's a private company that owns West Lafayette's water. Before that, it was called United Water. Before that, it was called General Waterworks. It's a corporation that's worldwide. I think it's the second largest corporation. I think there's EA2, which is the largest, and they're owned by the French.
They're owned by French?
Mhm.
No wonder it's so expensive. So wine is if something to do with that.
I did get jealous.
Any other questions?
When I first started telling people we were gonna have you here, somebody said to me, oh, I know all about that underground river, and it's the Pearl River. Is there a Pearl River?
Yes, there is. The Pearl River is actually a drainage pipe that you can walk in. It's a brick structure, and they call it the Pearl River. Now, if you're familiar with where City Hall is, you've got South Street, and on the northeast corner of that is the Pearl Apartments. And and it's got this really kind of weird parking underneath it and everything. And I remember I was here when I was in Lafayette when they built that. And they called it the Pearl Apartments because they built it over the top of the Pearl River. And the reason they had to do that weird parking, they wanted to make that all building, was so that if there's ever a problem with it, we can get down to it, because it would be underneath that building. It goes through the City Hall parking lot. And like I said, you can walk through it. It's all brick. And the story that I get from historians is that was actually used as part of the Underground Railroad back in the Civil War times. So.
Very interesting, so I always wondered who Mr. Pearl was. And then, is there a way, like I live way south of town and we have a well. Is there a way to find out, how good is that water, how safe is that water?
Sure. There's several labs that I can give you. We have a lab ourselves that we test city water with. There's also a company that rents lab space in our lab over in Lafayette. They can test your water.
Okay,
So,
because I have to keep hauling water in there and I'm tired of it. I mean, seriously, that's a lot. Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much.